So, welcome to a new feature on the fast lane car that we're calling
TFL Talk.
What did you originally want to call it, Nathan?
TFL Talk or Talk with Hooters. But we didn't have the rights to Hooters, so that didn't work out.
So, once a month, we're going to get together and talk about all things automotive. And since it's the beginning of the year, Nathan, we thought we'd start with the top 10 trends that we see coming down the road.
That didn't work out.
So once a month, we're going to get together and talk about all things automotive. And since it's the beginning of the year, Nathan, we thought we'd start with the top 10 trends that we see coming down the road.
That's right. These are either trends that are happening or are just about to happen, and most likely in 2014.
But before we get to that, there is some news we have to talk about.
Absolutely.
First of all, we want to thank you for backing the Prague to Pebble Beach or bus project. We're so excited that there's almost... Well, at this taping, at least 50 people have decided to step up and take part in this crazy trip where we're going to try to drive a Tatra 603 communist-era V8 air-cooled crazy car from Prague to Pebble Beach.
That's right, folks. We're going to do two legs, one in Europe and one in the United States. It's going to be thousands of miles.
But we're far short of our goal, Nathan.
Yes, we are. We need help.
Now, we have 160,000 subscribers?
Yeah, about.
So if everybody gave 50 cents?
We'd have more than enough money to do this.
So if you can give it 50 cents, if you can give $1, come join us on this trip. I think it's going to be not only educational, but especially entertaining because the chances of this car making it all the way to Pebble Beach are...
remote. And not only that, but you'll have an opportunity to actually be part of this. This is something that you can be part of, and we can actually get you into some of our video.
Yeah, so if you give enough money, we'll come by and give you a ride, or we'll put your name on a sticker on the car. We got a lot of great stuff that we're giving away because we want to thank you for watching and for being part of the Fast Lane car. By the way, what do you think of our expensive studio here?
The cameraman loves to bait me with this X-Type, which I absolutely hate, and he loves putting it there. So at least I have this next to me.
And of course, I've got the Raptor.
Yeah, you have the Raptor.
All right, so let's get to the top 10 trends that we think are going to be affecting you in the future. So number 10, the CVT, which we love to hate, don't we, Nathan?
Well, it's the continuously variable transmission. Think about it as a metal band that's flexible that goes between two cone-shaped components that hook up to basically your engine to the drivetrain. So what you're doing is you're having this band going around and around and around and around, and it's supposed to stay in the meat of the RPM band, and it doesn't because it's built for economy, not really for performance.
Yeah, and I almost fell off my seat, dude, when you came back from the WRX, the new WRX drive, and you said you loved the fact that the thing has a CVT.
No, I didn't say it that way. I didn't say it that way. I said that it had a CVT that worked and was actually fun to play with. That's what I said. And the reason why is if you hit a button, it holds the revs exactly where you want them for good cornering. So it's kind of like having
Is it whiny?
No, it's not whiny. Nowadays, a lot of the automakers that are using CVTs have managed to remove a lot of the whine that's coming from the transmission. This is something that I used to do all the time. But with the Subaru WRX for 2015, you're able to hit a button, and when you do, that special sport button holds that gear, and you have technically an 8-speed paddle shifter thing that sort of simulates it. And it really does work. So when you go around a corner, you want to hold 4,500 RPM, go around that corner, and then hit it to red line, you can do that. So that part's great. That's all I said. In terms of putting the
when God invented the car, he invented a system that the faster the car goes, the louder and more raspy the engine note. There is something unnaturally and ungodly about a car that goes no matter how fast you're accelerating. I'm sorry.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm not disagreeing at all. Look, it's not a fun thing, but CVTs are fairly economical. They're cheap, and now they're becoming lighter and lighter, and eventually they're going to be smaller than the equivalent automatic transmission. So
you're saying get used to it?
Yeah, we're going to have to get used to it.
Definitely get used to it. So what Honda's saying in the Fit is that you not only have one gear, but you have as many gears as you want.
Infinite gears.
Yeah, on the paddle shifters. You know, that's a marketing thing. It still is a CVT, and it still is whiny. And yeah, I know it's fuel efficient, but there's something so satisfying in driving just a regular manual transmission. Oh, I miss those days, my friend.
I do too. But think about it this way. There are bigger automatic transmissions that are coming out. We now have a 9-speed available in a Jeep. Huh?
Yeah, and that's the next trend, actually. Good segue. More gears. Now,
More gears.
I've been into cycling for a long time, and what happened in bicycling, and I think this is going to happen in cars, is you start out with like a 10-speed. Remember, you had a 10-speed when we were kids? And then they went to 20 speeds.
Yeah.
And then they eventually went to 30 speeds. And what happens is you don't change the lowest and highest gear, you just change the amount of gears in between.
That's right.
And at some point it becomes a marketing exercise. It doesn't become, in the car, more fuel efficient, it doesn't become more economical, it doesn't become cooler, it just becomes the ability to say, well, we've got a 9-speed Jeep and now yours is an 8-speed Jeep or a 7-speed Jeep, so it's old.
Yeah, I still think they're not quite there yet. I think that with 9 speeds we drove it, and we drove it several times, and frankly that transmission worked really, really good, and it was extremely economical.
Whoa. That Jeep was introduced and built like 2 months ago, and it sat on the factory floor because they couldn't ship them because they had a problem with the
programming
and the mapping of that transmission. So
yeah, to be fair, but once again, we did drive the vehicle and did that not drive well.
You said it had a hard time sometimes when you accelerated.
That's because I was deliberately trying to find a place where it was screwing up. And so yeah, with the recent Trailhawk we had, the Cherokee, when I accelerated really hard, let off the accelerator, let it sit for a second, then punched it again, a couple times it would hang up in the gears. So when Roman said on his rating to wait a year for it, that's part of the reason, because you want to wait for that transmission to get rid of all those bugs.
And the next car that's coming down the pike with that 9-speed is the Range Rover Evoque.
That's right.
So we've started with the Cherokee, the Evoque, and you can bet that there's going to be a 10-speed before this year's out. I can promise you. It's just more is better.
Yeah.
It's America, gosh darn it.
It's not going to be an American car. It'll be a European car. I guarantee it. Either European or Japanese that'll have a 10-speed.
Let me go back to the bikes. What happened with the bikes is they eventually went down to 20 gears because you needed more weight to have more gears. And at some point, the weight issue became so overly complicated that they said, 20 gears is perfect. It's the right amount of spacing in between the lowest and the highest gear. And I think that'll happen with automobiles too.
Oh, sure. They'll settle.
Or they'll go electric.
Or they'll go to a single speed or something crazy like that. Let's move on to the next one.
Electric.
Yeah, electric steering or electric car?
Both. Let's start with cars and we'll go to steering. So electric cars. We drove the Tesla, the P85 this year, and I just was smitten, and honestly, I fell in love with that car. I think that Tesla, especially with their infotainment, it's basically two iPads stuck on top of each other, has completely leapfrogged the rest of this world, and they're catching up. This year, there's going to be a big push by automakers to partner with companies like Google and Apple, and actually, I think Mercedes and GM are already partnered with Apple. But yeah, the Tesla got it right. When you can control everything in a car using an iPad, it really feels futuristic, it really feels intuitive, and it's really a good system.
It's a wonderful system, but I do have a problem with it. And driving at night, the amount of glare you get off the windshield from that massive panel, dude, seriously, it's noticeable.
You can turn it down.
Not that much, though. I noticed it a few times recently. That's just one minor issue. For a first effort of a real sedan, my God, they knocked it out of the park. But look, what about other cars that people can actually afford? What about the Nissan Leaf?
Yeah, the Nissan Leaf is a crunchy little commuter car that probably isn't ready for prime time yet.
I disagree. I think it's a fantastic little car. No. If you commute less than 50 miles each way to work,
it's boring.
Well, of course it is, but it holds the kids.
And Fiat proved with the 500e that you don't have to be boring.
True, that Fiat, that's a fun car to drive. But still, I think the Nissan Leaf for a regular commuter who really doesn't care about the car for fun, there are a lot of people out there who just want an appliance to get them from point A to point B, and that car works particularly well with low mileage.
No, I disagree. I think the secret sauce in any electric car is range, and that's why the Tesla works. Of course you're paying for it, right? But when you can get, I think the magic number is maybe 250 miles on a full charge, and you can do that quickly, then all of a sudden it becomes a usable everyday car. And I read a survey of Tesla owners that said at first when they get the Tesla, they charge it up every night, right? Range anxiety. But after about a week or two of ownership, they just drive it like a regular car and charge it when it needs to be charged.
It's really nice for the rich to have that type of flexibility, but for everybody else who lives on planet Earth, it's nice to have a car that you can actually afford that can take you back and forth to work if you have a basic job and you need to go to a basic location.
500e? Smart, electric.
And 500e. You're going to put your kids in the back of a 500e?
Yeah, that is a problem.
No. What I'm talking about is a practical...
How about a RAV4?
No. And you don't want the electric RAV4 because that thing really didn't have much range. And frankly speaking...
I'm talking in the back of it. You can take it to Home Depot.
The Nissan Leaf, despite the fact that it looks like a weird guppy, is a proper electric car and a really good first, hit for Nissan. I think, especially considering that actual regular people can afford this vehicle, That's what makes it such a winner.
I just can't get past the looks of it. And we did that video where we tried to use it for a full day, and you almost ran out of juice. And it barely
But
lived into
once
your garage.
again, that was beyond its mandate. It really is a vehicle to go short mileage for most. And there's so many people who only go a few miles to work back and forth. My brother-in-law, he only goes 5 miles a day.
Look, and if I'm being completely honest, the other thing that I'm not happy about the Leaf is I think electricity is obviously an old technology, but in a new form, in a new application. So
Yeah.
when you're doing new technology, or at least reinvent a new technology, then you should really do it right. And for instance, the Tesla and a lot of these other electric cars heat and cool their battery packs, which makes it useful in places like Colorado. Nissan kind of went the inexpensive route, right? They just keep the pack at ambient temperature, which here in Colorado means in the summer, perfect for batteries, but in the winter, right, that range drops like 25%.
You know what? It doesn't drop quite that much if you're smart about it, and I'll tell you why. Because I actually used it for a full week as a daddy-mommy car, right? And this is what I did. You
Park it in your living room?
You park it in the garage, and then you can program that you want the car to start heating up for you in the interior while it's still plugged in. And that way, you're not using any juice while it's heating up in your garage. Once you jump in it, the ambient temperature on the inside of the car is pretty nice. So you go drop the kids off to your work and then go park it again. And you can plug back in the vehicle with the heater pre-charged. And that way, you don't lose as much mileage and you don't have to worry about using as much juice to keep you warm. And they now have heated seats as an option.
All right, I'm going to give you that one. Score, Nathan.
Yeah.
Let's talk about electric steering, Nathan.
Yeah, electric steering. It's now the new reality for all vehicles. And here's the bottom line. For those of you who don't know, old days with power steering, you had a belt that would power a booster that would assist you when you were turning the car.
So there was a direct connection between the steering wheel and the road.
Yeah, because there was basically...
There was a rack and pinion that connected.
That would connect it to the road. But the feel had been dialed in over the years because we've had regular power steering for years and years and years and years. Now we have electric power steering, so it doesn't have to suck energy off the engine. It's its own unit that's electrically powered, and it assists the rack or whatever type of steering system.
There's no longer a mechanical connection between the steering wheel.
It depends on the car. Some do.
But a lot of them don't.
A lot of them don't.
And the manufacturers say the reason they're doing that is because it saves, once again, fuel. It's more fuel efficient to not have to have that power drain.
Yeah, the bottom line is that what it's meant to do is it's not sucking anything off the engine. It's only using a little bit of power to help you turn the front wheels of the car. So the thing is that it takes a lot of the feel out of it, and a lot of vehicles currently feel, well, frankly, they don't have feel. And that's one of the issues with electric power steering.
But you know what? It's like a video game. So if you guys grew up driving video cars, this is the exact same thing. Basically, the manufacturer is simulating road feel. And it's a new technology. They haven't quite gotten there. I don't think I've ever driven a car with electric steering that feels like, let's say, an old... pick any old BMW you want that had some of the best steering ever conceived by man.
Yeah, or some Porsches that also have some fantastic steering. It's getting better all the time, and now the simulated feel and the extra weight that some of them have are actually pretty good.
But it allows for things like autonomous cars, right? It allows for all kinds of electronic wizardry that make
self-parking.
Self-parking makes the car safer. It can actually, we just drove a Ford that will actually avoid an accident. I was in a Ford that they ran at 60 miles an hour at a blow-up car, not a real car, and the car would actually hit the brakes and turn the steering wheel on its own and keep you from smashing up.
Imagine a giant servo, an electric motor hooked up to your steering wheel, so when you want it to self-park without you touching it, it can actually do that for you. That's great, but at the same time, I think it sacrifices a lot of feel.
Yeah, and then the other thing I think that's universally hated is the electronic parking brake.
Well, the electronic parking brake makes sense for one reason. That is, it clears up a lot of space. Instead of having a big handbrake that takes up a certain amount of space, you have this little tiny button that you could pull, and it only takes up a little bit of space. That's awesome. Yeah.
No more handbrake turns.
Handbrake turn. Well, some of them will kind of let you do that. I've actually done it a few times, but
off on.
I prefer a direct feel and knowing that if I'm traveling down the road and I really need the rear end to do something for any particular reason, I could pull up on a lever and make it happen. But there's still a lot of vehicles that have the foot brake, and the foot brake is now actually electric in many vehicles. You just are getting the sensation that you're actually making it lock up while it's still wires that are connected to the brakes.
All right, we haven't talked about engine technology. I think there are two huge trends that, well, everybody's jumped aboard on, specifically turbos. Ford, all right, eco this, eco that, and don't be fooled. An EcoBoost engine is just a turbocharged engine with a cool name.
Yeah, yeah. By the way, a lot of people call EcoBoost EcoBoost. It's the biggest pet peeve I have. An echo is a re-sending material, information, in this case sound, back and forth. Eco, that is something you think of as green. Yeah, ecological. So sorry for whoever said that from the Ford group. But it's not echo, it's eco. Anyway, an EcoBoost engine is basically a turbo or twin turbocharged engine, depending on what the model is. Yeah,
That's twin scroll.
Twin scroll. The Ford is the twin turbocharged on their V6. It's actually two turbochargers.
Yes.
And there's another thing, though, and that's part of our little list here, and that's direct injected. So if you're able to combine a direct injected engine with a turbocharged engine, then suddenly you've got good economy and you've got a lot more power, and that's where everybody's going. They're shrinking down the size of engines in order to make 4 cylinders as powerful as 6 cylinders, like 8s, et cetera, et cetera.
Now, this isn't the first time that turbochargers have become popular.
They
were popular like 25 years ago. Remember the Saabs? Those were all turbocharged.
Yeah.
The issue back then was that turbos didn't have a very long lifespan.
No.
They spin very, very fast, and they tend to wear out quickly, and they tend to be very expensive to replace. Think about replacing a turbocharger on a diesel engine. It's the most expensive thing you could replace, or one of the most expensive things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we got this new breed of turbos, and we really don't know how the longevity will be. They haven't been around long enough yet.
Although a lot of them are going to different types of cooling. Some of them actually use the same cooling units that are sending from the engine. Some of them are kind of a hybrid system where they have their own coolers. There's a variety of different types of intercoolers too that are out there right now. Do you know that Fiat actually takes its intercooler, breaks it into two, and has it two little tiny intercoolers, the radiators at the front end of the 500 Abarth? It's really cool. They're little tiny things over there too. It's the new thing about turbochargers is they're able to make them more reliable. So obviously they last longer, and now they're able to make them a little bit more economical. And one other thing, those Saabs he was talking about, if you put your foot down on the accelerator all the way to the floor, you had to actually wait sometimes a full second for this turbocharger to spool up fast enough to really get the boost into the engine and make you move.
So American manufacturers basically invented built-in obsolescence. And then the other thing that they came up with was they came up with this idea that you would take a car. Well, there's no American cars here. Oh, here's a car. Here's an American car. So they take a car like this in the 50s and 60s, and they keep the car relatively the same underneath, and then they would add, a different set of headlights, or shrink or increase the fins on these things, right?
Yeah, but it's the same car.
Yeah, it's the same car, and that same thing is happening again, and this time it has to do with
what?
The headlights.
Oh, the headlights.
Yeah. So the headlight bling is what's now the new way to tell if a car is new or old, right? I think Audi probably pioneered that. They were the very best at it originally because they came up with the cool LED surrounds, and now all the manufacturers have jumped on top of it. And I could tell you something, Nathan. It's so prominent, it's so shiny that if you notice a car's headlight bling, you will immediately know if it's a current model or an old model.
Yeah, it immediately puts you into an obsolete category, even if your car is only a year old. Yeah, because sometimes
and
now they have to cheap to change, I guess. But but then again, you look like that guy who has to have the car that recently came out instead of the one who's satisfied with whatever he or her purchased. And that's really one of the issues, is that they're changing them so quickly. And it all seems to be coming off of Audi and some other car companies, but Audi really is leading the jeweled-like front end.
I think it's cool. I love seeing cars like that. I think the Tesla is beautiful. I think the Audis are beautiful. I think the new Mercedes, as I said before, is gorgeous. It just gives designers a lot more room to play and a lot more room to design.
Yeah.
Okay, and our very last trend is obviously the biggest one, autonomous cars. They're coming. I drove a Mercedes-Benz E-Class that basically drove itself. And I mean by driving itself, I mean it drove itself. I took my foot off the pedals, actually my partner did, took off the steering wheel, and below 18 miles an hour in stop-and-go traffic, it drove itself.
And when the robots take over, and when you start seeing scenes from Terminator where skulls are being crushed under robotic feet, this is where it all began. My biggest problem with autonomy is the fact that there is always an unknown element. There is an earthquake, there is a tidal wave, there is a bunch of prostitutes that jumped in front of your car in Miami. Whatever it may be, there are things out there that you just can't judge. You don't know exactly what's going to happen, and I think that we're making a leap into autonomy before we have a chance to really figure out all those small details.
Yeah, the technology's ahead of the
I think so. I think so. And I think that at some point in time, when California does fall into the sea, I was born in California, believe me, I know, then the car's going to have a hell of a hard time figuring out, well, wait a minute, now the Pacific Coast Highway is gone. How do I get around that? Hell of it, I'm just going to roll into the sea. it's going to get to some weird plateau, and I really, really, truly am against autonomous driving.
Plus, if you love to drive, it's hard to give up control because face it, driving is one of the great pleasures in life.
And you know what? It's going to increase on alcoholism. That's the problem. Everybody's going to be sitting back going, well, my car's driving itself. Why don't I have a vodka tonic here?
Up with excuses to hate
just pound that sucker. By the time I get home, I'm completely sauced. Oh, I have to take over because the car's Microsoft or Apple thing
what they'll do
dead.
is they'll make you blow in a little tube.
Before you get in, you have to blow the car before you drive.
No.
That's what you have to do. Thank you. No, thank you.
All right, on that note, I think we're going to get to the very last trend that Tommy added to this, amphibious cars.
Yes, please. That's the way to go. I think they should have a race. The fastest car you can possibly make that can go across water and off-road and onto a racetrack. If you can combine all those, wow, I'm glad I finished the coffee. If you can combine all those, awesome. In fact, the first car you should do it with, all Jaguars. Make them amphibious. It's the only thing they're good for.
So, Elon, once you sell Tesla to GM...
Mr. Musk, the new X Prize.
Yeah, then go for the amphibious car that Nathan just described. Thanks for watching, guys. Remember, come back next time as we do more TFL talk. Ciao.
Bye.
You saw it first on the Fast Lane Car.